All right, good evening and welcome to the All Candidates Forum. My name is Dana Foster and I'm the online community channel host and producer at the Hub Online Network, and I'll be serving tonight as your moderator. Now moving on to the forum, please welcome John Kidder of the Green Party of Canada. Michael Nenn of the New Democratic Party. Jati Sidhu of the Liberal Party of Canada. And Brad Vis of the Conservative Party of Canada. Each candidate will start with a short introduction. We will then move on to the written questions. At 8:45, we will begin closing remarks, and if we run out of written questions, we will take questions from the audience. We will start with Brett.
All right. It is good to be in Ashcroft tonight, and I want to thank all of you for being with us here this evening. Sorry, I'm just getting used to this mic now. Back in April, I held a town hall meeting here, and I promised that I'd be up every single month since then, and my team and I have done that. And from the hundreds of conversations I've had here in Ashcroft and Cache Creek, this is what I've heard, that it's hard for families to get ahead these days. Small businesses have suffered due to the Liberal tax changes. Beef farmers in the region don't feel the government has done enough to support them with the closure of certain markets. Gun owners are worried that the Liberals are eroding their rights to lawfully own and safely store firearms. People in the canyon, across the canyon, want the pipeline built to avoid an environmental catastrophe on the Thompson River. Everyone's worried about the plight of Steelhead. There are very real and legitimate concerns about a future flood, future forest fires. People want a representative in town on a regular basis. And seniors are struggling to receive the services they need as the cost of living increases. So if you decide to trust me with your vote this election, my pledge to you is this. I'm going to fight for a more affordable future. The Conservative platform is broadly based on reducing your tax load. We're going to rescind the Liberal small business tax changes. I want to help Ashcroft and Cache Creek move ahead. A number of years ago, I was working at the Department of Foreign Affairs, and I was there when we started doing the terminal project here. Our party has committed to appointing a rural minister, because what I'm hearing in the communities is that rural issues are often underrepresented, and the complexity of rural issues aren't addressed appropriately by both Conservative and Liberal cabinets of the past. Our party's committed to restoring the Recreational Fishery Conservation Partnership Program. We've committed to new funds for community-based conservation programs. I will open, as I promised here before, a mobile MP office to ensure that you receive regular and timely services from your Member of Parliament. The Conservative Party is committed to making sure the Trans Mountain Pipeline proceeds. I want to work to enhance the ag sector across the riding, address the tariff and non-tariff barriers that prevent our goods from being exported. And the Conservative Party wants to protect the rights of gun owners and lawful gun owners here in the Fraser-Canyon. But most importantly, I want to draw on the hundreds of conversations, even the dozens I had this afternoon, to be an effective representative on your behalf. It's a real honor to be running on behalf of the Conservative Party, and I want to be your representative in Ottawa, not Ottawa's representative in Mission Matsqui Fraser-Canyon. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move along to Michael Nenn of the New Democratic Party.
Good evening, everybody. So, my name is Michael Nenn. I'm originally born in Edmonton, Alberta. I lived there until 2003, and then I moved out to the West Coast. I've had family in the Lower Mandan for generations, and BC is incredible. I've worked all over the province, so my background is wireless telecommunications. So I started actually building towers, and I worked into a position as a foreman, and now I'm a project manager, overseeing actually the Freedom build through Shaw throughout BC and Vancouver Island. And I learned that, when I was building towers, about accountability and about perseverance and about blood and sweat and tears. And as a blue-collar worker, it was that background that gave me the skill sets to persevere no matter what the cost. And as such, I think that's a broader perspective, looks at who we are as Canadians and how we've built this country. And it's not through corporations, but it's through all of you. It's through families and working families, and making ends meet, and working hard to ensure that at the end of the day, you've got a job well done. But as we've seen, that job well done doesn't seem to be rectified or recognized by the governments we vote in, and especially from Ottawa. And over the last 30 years, I've watched continuous Liberal and Conservative governments work to represent not all of you, but the 1%. And as the NDP, we understand that investing in offshore tax havens and corporations, it does not help Canada, and it does not help Canadians. And as such, I'm here to say it's time to make a change. It's time to ensure that the investments we make as a federal government with the NDP are in Canadians, not in corporations. Which is why, for instance, we did in the 1960s with Lester B. Pearson, we supported and brought in the Canada Healthcare Act. We supported the government to bring in pensions. We supported through unions and workers and rights, and that includes environmental rights as well, to bring in the things that we take for granted today that are slowly being eroded by Conservative and Liberal governments. So our promise to you as part of a multi-level platform is to increase our health care. So to finally bring in pharmacare that the Liberals have been promising since '93. To finally bring in child care that families need so they can go to work and be productive citizens since 1997. To make sure that we protect pensions and don't erode them. And enshrine the EI, for instance, so it's not used by the status quo as a piggy bank. It's time to make sure that we take the money and the hard-earned tax dollars that you pay and put it to use to help you, not offshore corporations. And that's why I stand here today, because it's not about enabling billionaires to become trillionaires. It's not about letting people take that money and those hard-earned incomes and putting them somewhere else. It's to invest in Canadians, it's to invest in this country, to make sure that we have a bright future. So I hope on October 21st, you look at the vision of Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, because we're not in it for our corporate friends, we're in it for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to Jati Sidhu of the Liberal Party of Canada.
Good evening, and thank you, Jessica, and your team, for putting this event together. And thank you all for being here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, elections are all about making choices. My choice is to continue to build the community infrastructure, including high-speed internet, supporting a national pharmacare program for all Canadians. We are increasing OAS by 10% and the survivors benefit for seniors by 25%. We have created a tax-free Canada Child benefit for families. And we are supporting affordable housing for seniors and lower-income families. I'll continue to work with First Nations and community leaders, protecting our wild salmon and steelhead trout fisheries, which is very important for communities living alongside the river. Our government has doubled the gas tax funding for rural communities. Residents in rural communities should be very concerned with Andrew Scheer's proposed $53 billion program cuts. They'll include infrastructure projects like Ashcroft Inland Port, which is creating hundreds of good-paying jobs right here in this town. Make no mistake, rural communities will face the brunt of Conservative cuts. I'll continue working hard for you, and I sincerely hope that I can count on your support to continue to move Canada forward. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Jati. We are now going to move along to John Kidder of the Green Party of Canada.
Hello, everybody. I've actually been on this stage before, and in any number of roles. I've been a psychotic murderer, I've been a drunken milkman, I've been an egotistical, misogynistic jerk of a professor of English. And in each of those, I've asked people to believe in that role that I was playing. This is different. I'm not auditioning here for the role, I'm auditioning for the most important job that one can have in the country, which is to be a member of parliament. I think I'm well qualified for that job. I've got lots of skills, lots of background. Many people here know what that is. But I think I want to speak a little bit, if I can, in the introduction here, about the nature of what the Green Party actually brings to these discussions. You know, we're often cast as a one-issue party just because we say that the global warming problem is the single largest one facing us all, and it is our ethical duty to solve this for our children and our grandchildren. And we say that as number one guaranteed. Without that, other things are not so important. Number two, though, I am an economist, actually, and we have a budget, and I was partly responsible for that budget. And I want to say that we submitted all of our tax proposals to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, and the Parliamentary Budget Officer came back and said, these are all perfectly credible, all the money is there, the only difficulty is the people you're trying to tax will try to evade the tax, because they're very clever. And we say, bring them on, we're equally clever, we can write law that doesn't allow as simple evasion of taxes as the monumentally complicated tax code there is now. It's relatively simple to solve the questions of affordability by taking money from those who have the most money, they have the greatest ability to pay, and the least willingness to pay. I'm not talking about anybody in this room. I'm talking about multinational corporations, internet companies, senior executives who use stock options as a way to avoid income taxes. I'm talking about looking at billions of dollars of readily available revenue for the government of Canada, if the government of Canada would have the political courage to face down the people who have been their backers for so many years. We do have that courage. We can use that money to pay for the social programs that are talked about by all of the other candidates up here, and it will be done that way. And it's not hard to do. We need to have political courage to take that on. And again, I say the Parliamentary Budget Office has reviewed all of our proposals. We were the only party to submit our complete budget and complete platform to the PBO and also to an independent advisory service called the Institute for Fiscal Studies and Democracy. We can count. We don't just hug trees. We can count. And we can count better than other people can in some cases. We can count what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has told us all in no uncertain terms. It has said to us that we must reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases in this country and around the world by 45% by 2030. 45% by 2030, or we are, as they say, likely to get into runaway global warming, in which case the situation will no longer be fixable by any human agency on this planet. We have one shot to do this, that's in the next few years. We can do it. It's not so hard to cut these things back. Again, we have to face down vested interests, powers that be. That's it. Thank you. I'm here to face them down.
Thank you very much. We'll now begin with the questions. Our first question is, will you support a referendum to allow people to decide whether or not the people should have the right to vote on bills before the House of Commons, as well as permitting citizen-initiated legislation, essentially people voting on bills with a smartphone? This goes first to you, Brad.
If you go to my website, bradvis.ca, I said if I'm given the opportunity to have a private member's bill when I'm elected to Parliament, what I want to do is change the referendum process to give the opportunity to citizens to force the House of Commons to debate ideas that they feel are in the interest of Canada, to bring those forward, to establish a threshold so Canadians can have a choice over how Parliament debates certain issues. At many of our previous debates, many people have outlined that we don't really feel Ottawa is very responsive to the challenges that Canadians face. That's why I proposed legislation that will give Canadians a voice in the House of Commons and force parliamentarians to not to discuss the issues of the opposition or the government, but the matters that matter most to Canadian citizens. Thank you so much.
You didn't answer the question.
Michael?
So the question, I believe, is about direct democracy, is what I said. So speaking as you as constituents to ask the questions you have, the answer to that for the NDP is we absolutely support electoral reform. And while it's not direct democracy, it's looking at Canadians and getting a national advisory group to reach out to you to ask, what do you want? What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? And then take those across Canada and participate from all of you, and basically then mold that into a plan that we would take into action through Parliament. The fact is that we should have been in some sort of electoral reform system for this election that was promised by the Liberals that is yet to happen. And I think the fact that direct democracy, I would love to see it. I think 37 million people voting directly on policies is not sustainable or feasible. But I think it's through action of the parliament, or through the parliamentary process, but through you as engaging in a political party and the grassroots campaign, as I've seen through the NDP. So my answer to that is we support electoral reform. Thanks.
Thank you. And next, Jati.
Well, let's talk about electoral reform. I had 7 town halls through this writing asking constituents what they want to see, what kind of reform they want to see. For example, there's 100 people in the room, there was only one person wanting a change. 99% people, they wanted to stick with the same system. We consulted over 40,000 different forums throughout the country and reported back to the parliament. People didn't want change. But the other question, I love bottom-up approach. I've been having town halls here on poverty reduction, on pharmacare, and then I take these concerns to Ottawa and discuss it further on it. That's my approach on it. Thank you.
Well, Jati, I don't think to contradict you right here on the stage, but tens of thousands of people did come to those meetings on electoral reform across the country, and a very large number of them supported different forms of proportional representation. They did not support the one the Liberal Party wanted, which was ranked balance, and so the Prime Minister rejected, out of hand, the considerations of the entire Interparliamentary Committee and all the considerations he had across the country. But back, I believe it's your question, about referendum, or democracy by referendum, effectively, if I can call it that. I don't think that's an effective way to work. I think that having citizen-initiated legislation, that is, I think there should be bills able to be brought to the Parliament if the significant number of citizens want them, but I think the job of members of Parliament is to consider and to work as hard as they possibly can to understand complex matters of legislation, balance one thing off against another, and finally make a vote according to the wishes of their constituents and their conscience. I want to point out that in the Green Party, well, we will never whip a vote. So our discussions are always with the MP and the MP's constituents, never with the party brass. That's not the way this party works around the world.
Thank you very much. Our next question is, and we'll be starting with Michael. What is your plan for addressing climate change?
Addressing climate change. First off, 300,000 jobs promised to transition existing workers into new clean technology. We also want to make sure that we're canceling the fossil fuel subsidies to big gas and oil. Because why are we taking your tax dollars and giving it to billionaires, as I previously said? It doesn't make sense. But as the NDP understands, there's hardworking people. I've worked in Syncrude and Suncor myself, building towers, but I've seen, so I understand, and we understand as the NDP, that it takes time to transition, but we need to do it now. We also plan to invest heavily in transportation, and that includes public transportation, and that's not only in the urban areas, but rural as well, as we've seen with Greyhound and the disappearance, which has left many communities left on the hook. Finally, we also, as a side thing, it's like 15 seconds, is to land-based closed pen technology for salmon fishing, for the Atlantic salmon. There's many other things as well on the platform, but it's only a minute to talk to, so thanks.
Thank you.
That's a great question, actually. I've been hearing this at the doorstep. The whole world, for the last couple of weeks, coming on the bridges and the streets and trying to tell us that climate change is real. We need to take action now. So what we did, 2015, within a month, we start work in Ottawa. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau went to Paris to sign the Paris Accord. we have signed a memorandum of understanding with China to ban single plastic use by 2031. We're committing net zero emission by 2050. We're promising phasing out coal in our country by 2028. Better public transit. We have already approved 1,200 projects which are environmentally friendly. I was lucky enough to announce one in Abbotsford Mission. We bought 10. Oh, thank you.
Well, the Green Party starts off with a fundamental premise that resolving the issue of global warming, that is, of keeping the Earth's temperature to within 1.5 degrees Celsius of what it was before industrial times, is paramount and fundamental ethical duty for all of us in this room. Any of us here who has a child or has a grandchild has a moral duty to do this. And we are also a party that believes in science. And the science tells us that in order to hold the temperature to 1.5 degrees, we have to cut emissions worldwide by 45% by 2030, and we have to be net carbon neutral by 2050. So, number one, we believe that those constraints on world economic activity are right and that they are binding. Number two, we actually do have a plan to get there, which shows what we need to do sector by sector across the economy, ramping down fossil fuels, ramping up renewables to get there. It can be done, it just requires political will. Secondly, we want to say that there are more jobs in this plan than there are now available to people in Canada to go to work. Is that the red card? Done, thank you.
Thank you. This question is... Oh. I'm doing really good at this. Go ahead.
Broadly speaking, the Conservative plan is focused on three primary points. Green technology, not carbon taxes. We want to incent Canadian companies to invest in innovation. Some of that's happening here in British Columbia already. We have a plan to conserve more of our natural environment. And third, we want to take the pollution reduction global. Under the Paris Accord, for example, Article 6, there's a technology transference agreement. Canada's developed some of the leading technology in carbon capture and storage. Why aren't we sharing some of that technology with other countries like China to help them reduce their emissions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, the way I see it, the Conservative Party don't have any plan. We have a climate change plan and it's working. We're putting $40,000 per household for retrofit. We're putting $5,000 to buy an electric car. We're putting $5,000.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is to all the candidates, and the question is, can you name the 5 First Nations language groups that comprise the Mission Matsqui First Nation Fraser-Canyon? Is anyone that wants to go first?
Sorry, I missed the question. I was too hyper.
Okay, the question is, can you name the 5 First Nations language groups
Without using your phone?
Yeah.
that comprise the Mission Matsqui Fraser-Canyon?
Well, one thing I can tell you, I have 37 First Nation, and I was working very closely with them. Stolo Nation, and then Sahelas, Musqueam, Matsqui, Flat, Band. I'm trying my best to get it all, but I'm working very closely with the First Nation with all the issues that they have. Thank you.
Let me try. I can say that we have the Plaxco here in the Thompson. We have the Secrump just north of us here, running up all through the Shuswap, the Stata people back in the Lillooet area, and a language that I can't pronounce, which is the Stolo people's language, which is the Holisticum or something, and I cannot make the word work with my colonial tongue. I do try. Those 4 I know. There may be another.
I'd like to congratulate Mr. Kidder on that because I did not know all the languages, but I do know the fifth one is Halkamalin from the Stalo people in the Fraser Valley.
From my perspective, it was just a Stolo Nation, and my apologies for not knowing that, but I'm going to be honest and say no, I don't. I would also say that I noticed, and I don't know if this is in ceded territory or not, so did we make that, so we technically should have actually made that declaration as well at the beginning, but that's so I'd like to acknowledge that we work, play, and live on the unceded territory of, which is the particular... Okay, and I apologize, I can't, but in the traditional and ancestral territory. So now let it be said. I would say the NDP, we absolutely will support the UN Declaration on Indigenous Rights, and we also will enshrine the calls to action on the 94 articles. We are absolutely committed to ensuring that there's a new relationship with First Nations, and that includes self-determination, self-government, and actually ending boil advisories, not promising and then still having issues. We understand, though, that there's systemic issues with the relationship that we have, and that there's a lot of work to be done. All I can say in the last 15 seconds is the NDP are committed to ensure that we actually take action and have positive results. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question, we're going to start with Jati. What in your personal or work life experience makes you able to relate to and represent the needs of the constituents of rural Canada?
Well, right off the bat, I'm elected member on the National Rural Caucus. And with that push, first time ever, we were able to convince my government to have a rural minister, which is Bernadette Jordan, and she was into this writing, making funding announcement for internet. You know what? As a member of parliament, I've been coming out like every event there is. I know it's 22,000 square mile area, but I committed myself to serve my community. I lived in the writing for the last 45 years. I did business, like farming for 35 years. And then I did home building I created jobs and paid to build this economy. Thank you.
Well, I've lived and worked all over Canada. I was born in the far north, in Yellowknife, Labrador, northern Quebec. I went to school in Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia, Alberta. I've been back and forth across this country a lot. I spent a whole lot of my time outside. I spent about 5 years sitting on a saddle horse over the Nicola Valley. The first ranch I ever worked on was here in Ashcroft at the Chataway. I've done a whole lot of physical labor in my life, and I've done technology companies, and I've done economics, and I've done resource analysis. I've done a whole bunch of things. And that gives me an understanding of and an ability to connect with people in a lot of different walks of life. So when questions are brought to me, I can pretty much generally find a connection with the person who brings it. And I can pretty much generally have some felt understanding of the issue. And I have a good deal of academic and political experience through which I can filter that felt understanding, and I can make a difference in Parliament. I chose to come up to Ashcroft 10 years ago after my late wife died. I am a rural guy in my heart, and that's why I'm here.
I'm born and raised in Matsqui, which is now Abbotsford, and my mom worked on the family farm that my grandparents started when they moved to Canada from the Netherlands after World War II. And when my mom would come pick me up from school, she'd be wearing her barn clothes. And sometimes I'd get embarrassed because my mom was the only one working on the farm. She was literally covered in SHIT. And she said to me, "Brad, don't ever be ashamed of that because that's the smell of money. So whenever you're driving down the highway and you're smelling that, that's money. That's people working hard. That's rural resilience, and that's the background I come from." Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, quickly on that note, one thing we know about manure is that when it's in one place, it doesn't do very much good. When you spread it around, it makes things grow, doesn't it? And that's what the NDP is all about. Spreading that money around instead of trillions in offshore. But anyways, so my blue collar background, what can I say? I am passionate about politics because it impacts all of us, whether we like it or not. And my dedication to my work, to the profession, and where I am, to my family, my wife is a teacher, I have 3 small children. Absolutely, it's part and parcel of why I'm here and standing before you. And I know I'm not the polished politician. I tend to speak from my heart. But to me, it's a bigger issue as well. It's about watching Canada being governed by bankers and financiers and people that don't understand the root causes and issues of rural communities like this. My grandfather was in Grimshaw region of Peace River. He was a farmer, so I have that background, and of course I have family in the Lower Mainland. So, anyways, time's up. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Moving along. To Jati.
No.
Hello? John?
Next question. Next question.
Okay, thank you very much. This is fun. Okay, so going on to the next question. What is your party slogan? What does it mean to you and the people of Mission Matsqui Fraser-Canyon?
That's me.
And I believe that's Michael. It's John.
Well, it's actually really interesting for me. Our party slogan, cooked up by some really bright people in Ottawa this time around, is not right, not left, but forward together. The thing that's interesting about that was in 1983, when we founded the first Green Party in North America, our slogan was not right, not left, forward. So it seems that it hasn't come very far since 1983. We still do not believe in an ideological divide between the right and the left. We think that's nonsensical in a complicated world to imagine that anything is arranged on a single line, on a single spectrum, and that's where people make decisions. That's just an absurd way to think. We think that everything happens in multiple dimensions, and we want to be not working to say we're right, we're left. We want to say actually we need to consider problems in all of their complexity and move them straight ahead. And we think that's the issue for Mission Matsqui Fraser-Canyon as well. We don't think that this is a right-left divide. We think this now is a divide between, frankly, our ethical responsibilities and our duties and abdication thereof.
Thank you.
Broadly speaking, the Conservative platform is focused on helping Canadians get ahead. And what that means to me is I think about the Canada my young children are going to inherit. Are we going to have a Canada that is fiscally responsible? Are we going to have a Canada that takes the environmental challenges that we face seriously? I'm a Conservative, and I am saying that yes. And are we going to take basically a social, economic, and environmental approach to the issues that we're facing as Canadians and do our best to give the next generation a better foot forward? Thank you.
The NDP slogan is, we're in this for you, because we're not in it for the 1%, because they've been getting their fair share for the last 20 years. And I'll ask all of you, because you know, you face the issues and the constraints and the issues on a daily basis. And from 20 years ago to today, do you think Canada has become better as a nation? I've knocked on a lot of doors and a lot of people that have a lot of responses that say no, they don't feel that they're better ahead. We are the largest nation in the world, which I think is one of the richest nations in the world, and yet the fact that we have almost 1 million children still in poverty, 57% in First Nations, is absolutely disgusting. I think the fact that we have 600,000 seniors that are in poverty is disgusting. There are so many issues today, and that's why through the NDP, it's about investing in Canadians, not in offshore tax havens, not in multinational lateral agreements, free trade agreements. They're investor rights agreements. And we need to change that. We need to start governing for the people and be accountable. Thank you.
My slogan is moving forward. I want to build upon what was done in the last 4 years. We have lowered taxes on 9 million Canadians. We have introduced the Canada Child Benefit, non-taxable, and helped 9 children out of 10. We have lifted 300 children out of poverty. We have increased guaranteed income supplement for 1 million single seniors. We have got taxes for middle class. Under our plan, a typical middle class family of 4 is now $2,000 better off per year than Harper era. We're putting 10% down for first-time home buyers. We will ensure middle-class Canadians pay no federal tax on the first $15,000 they earn. This is the personal exemption we're talking about. We will increase old age security. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question is, how would you or your party address the twin issues of livability and affordability facing millennials? And we're going to begin with Brad.
First off, the Conservative Party has committed to maintaining and increasing our core social and health transfers to the provinces to address the livability. We've committed to increasing them 3% annually. Affordability, the Conservative platform, as I mentioned earlier, is broadly based on reducing the overall tax burden of Canadian families and businesses to help them get ahead and not just get by. Thank you.
Half of Canadian families are $200 away from financial insolvency. That's an issue. The NDP wants to bring in pharmacare. That includes dental, hearing, vision, and mental health, because we believe that strengthening the Healthcare Act is the way to go. We want to bring in childcare, $1 billion to create affordable childcare spaces, because that is fundamental to ensuring that Canadians can meet and go to the jobs without having to worry about their children. We also want to make sure that we bring in a program to retrofit your homes, not only to help with the environment so you can save you on utility bills, because that's money in your pockets. And we also want to cap cell phone and internet bills, because one of the highest rates in the world is absolutely ridiculous. And I work in the wireless industry, I can tell you stories. And then finally, we want to eliminate interest on student loans, because it's education and achieving your fullest potential, which is part and parcel of how we are as Canadians and how we treat each other, and achieving the dreams that we want. So healthcare, education, affordability, childcare. Thank you.
Well, I did talk about affordability at the starting. In these areas, I've been talking to the mayors and the council about the healthcare in the rural areas. So we decided to put $6 more billion so rural communities will have a better Medicare services in our area. We're talking about students. We are working very closely with telecom companies to lower cost on wireless services by 25%. Michael talked about student loans. We have student grants up to $4,200 a year so they can pay tuition fees. We have doubled the summer student jobs. Somebody came to me early actually before we started, under New Horizon. These communities, Ashcroft got the benefit of New Horizon program. We're helping small communities. You want to change the floor, you want to change the kitchen, you want to put the roof on. So we know, thank you.
Well, we can address the financial issues around livability pretty simply. Number one, we think that we should have free tuition. The most important investment any country can make is in its citizens. Free tuition, we want to cancel outstanding student loans and interest, and pay them from the taxes we're going to collect from others. That's for post-secondary education and trades. We're going to need tons of tradespeople in this country as we go through this renaissance of our economy in the next little while. And we want to increase the stock of rental housing and co-ops and other forms of lower cost housing to enable people to get started in the market. But let's talk about livability, shall we? This is going to be a planet which is not livable for the millennials. That's why there are millions of millennials marching around the world demanding that we, old farts, do something about this. And we are the only people who can. We old farts because we elect governments, and we all vote, and we all have a duty to ensure livability for the millennials and for their children. And I hate to keep harping on this over and over and over again, but livability is not about money. Money issues are simple to address. The climate issues are much more important.
Thank you. And beginning with Michael, what is your party's stance on fracking?
Well, we're going to cut oil and gas subsidies, and that's including LNG, because we understand that fracking is bad for the environment, and that as in order to achieve our targets, which we do have as well, 1.5 by 2030, net zero carbon by 2040, and ensuring that we actually invest in Canadian companies so that they can create the technologies that we have to make sure that we enter a clean carbon future. There's a lot of actually similarities in our policies, but we are against fracking. We understand that it's the 300,000 jobs to transition people from those fossil fuel industries to cleaner technologies, and that's what we need to do. On the issue of affordability, I just wanted to make a mention. We're also committed to 500,000 units across Canada to make sure that it's affordable housing. It's part and partial. When I was 20, we didn't see tent cities, and now they're everywhere. And I don't think it's a choice, yes, but it's also a systemic issue of governments that have ignored Canadians for far too long. Thank you.
Hey, one thing, my government understands that economy and environment go together. One thing we need to keep in mind, we are the resource-based economy. As long as we do things keeping environment in mind, which is okay. That's why we are pledging $680 million to electrify the whole system when it comes down to fracking and filling and shipping and all that. We know it's a must. The 35 million people in our country, we have to export our resources to the tidewater and doing it wisely. That's why we have allocated $1.5 billion to secure our ocean where the loading is going to take place in Vancouver. Thank you.
I didn't hear the answer to that question. Fracking, yes or no? If I may interrupt?
As long as it's done right, yes. It's okay.
So fracking is good if it's done right?
Yes.
Fracking is not good if it's done right or done wrong. Fracked natural gas is being touted by proponents as being some kind of a clean replacement for coal. Fracked natural gas emits as much carbon dioxide and methane emissions as burning coal does. The LNG project in northern BC will be the equivalent of the tar sands in terms of CO2 and methane that's emitted. It's not acceptable under any rationale by anyone who actually cares to take action on climate. And all of my friends up here profess that they want to take action on climate. None of their targets meets what they call the Paris targets, number one. None of them meets the recommendations made by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. None of them is sufficient. All of them will lose. And losing slowly in this game is losing. We're not allowed to lose. It's not an option that we can entertain. Fracking, no, under no circumstances. Fracking gone by 2030, bitumen gone by 2030, then we can make the targets.
Thank you, and to Brad.
Well, I support natural resource extraction, so yes, I do support fracking. Canada has some of the best environmental standards in the world, and we should be proud of our natural resources and use them to the benefit of our society as Canadians. And I stand up and I proudly support natural resource extraction. Thank you.
Brad, this question is for you again. What is the Green Expansion Accelerator? Sounds like something out of a Marvel comics.
The Green Expansion Accelerator? Is that from our environment platform?
Yes.
It's a question that's been submitted.
Okay, so under our environment platform, there is a bullet point that outlines, there's 2 points that I'll touch on. First, we have a venture capital fund that we want to implement to help technology companies in Canada receive the financing they need to grow their business. The second part, what we're also planning on doing is for companies that are investing in innovation in Canada, we want to reduce their overall tax burden from 15 to 5% if they are signing patents and developing that technology here in Canada. Thank you, great question.
Thank you. Can any of the candidates tell me what percentage of our taxes goes to pay the interest on the national...
Dana, do we get an opportunity to respond to that question, or just to...
It was directed, the question was directed to Brad specifically.
It was a pretty specific...
It's a pretty specific question, so...
If you'd like a minute to talk about
All candidates should.
the environment.
Okay, then we'll continue on with John.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say, Brad...
Can we have your mic?
Do you want a microphone, please?
Okay, we're going to cover that question.
No.
You can speak till your microphone. Okay.
Brad, all of us want to exploit Canada's natural resources responsibly. Everyone here. That's what Canada is based on. We started with fish, furs, square timber, etc., and we've moved on. Now we're done with fossil fuels. It's not responsible to exploit fossil fuels anymore in the face of the crisis facing the globe. And if you know the science, you know that. So your party's policies are not consistent with dealing, in your words, for the benefit of Canada. They're not. Secondly, a green expansion accelerator does sound like something out of Marvel Comics, but actually it's really quite viable. When we move into this next economy, the new economy of renewable resources, we are going to see an acceleration of all sorts of things around the globe. We're going to have inexpensive, abundant electricity, and it's going to change the way the world works. We're going to see, perhaps in Canada, we might start to process raw resources instead of seeing them as we see in Ashcroft going down the river in the plains in raw, unprocessed form. We'll have abundant, inexpensive energy, and we can process them here. It's going to be the biggest single change since the Industrial Revolution that's going to happen in the next 20, 30 years.
You did have 45 seconds left, so go ahead.
The plan put forward by the Green Party would destroy national unity in Canada, and Alberta would be a separate country.
No.
Don't speak for Alberta. We're in BC.
If we eliminate natural resource extraction in Canada, our national unity will falter.
If you say so, then I guess it will. You know what? There's Canadians everywhere, so.
The Albertans are pissed.
Well, it doesn't matter. So are we.
Well, if you don't care, that's your business.
We will wait till the end of the panel discussion to have questions and comments from the audience. We're going to move along to Jati. If you'd like to respond, you have 1 minute.
I'm good. I'll pass.
I just wanted to talk about resource extraction. As working in Suncor and Syncrude, I wanted to talk about, we've been, sure it's jobs, but we've been giving away our resources for decades now. How much do we have for strategic oil reserves? Zero. How much do we have for gas reserves? Zero. Did you know we have an agreement with the US that we have to reduce our use of oil before we reduce our export to the US? And that's absolutely despicable. I think, where are we going to start doing value-added products? Shipping raw logs out of this country, shipping bitumen, whatever you want. I mean, we need to have a government that starts taking care of Canadians and start doing value-added products so we are once again a manufacturing country instead of basically signing these agreements that ships jobs offshore, temporary foreign workers here, and allowing most of us to go on EI that both parties want to basically get rid of. They've dipped into it before. You dipped into CPP as well. Anyways, that's my 2 points on that. It's about value added here in Canada for Canadians.
Thank you very much. Going on to the next question, we are asked, what are your thoughts on increasing disability and pension payments? This question, I believe, goes back to Brad.
Broadly speaking, they're generally, in our platform announcement, we have committed to improving the disability tax credit for those that benefit. And I can't go into the details in 1 minute, but I do know that it is in there. And the second part of the question?
That was, what are your thoughts on increasing disability and pension payments?
Well, and on pension payments, generally I understand that there are lots of seniors that have a hard time living on a fixed income. In our platform, we do not commit to increasing pension payments. What we do commit to is reducing the overall tax burden. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Disabilities. We do want to work to ensure that we increase disabilities, as well as we want to make a national program for those with autism and work with those disabled to ensure that they have that inclusive and accountability in the workplace. We want to make sure that there's no barriers or constraints to them having productive lives. On the issue of pensions, we want to protect pensions. For instance, when Sears went bankrupt and all those workers lost their pension, $710 million, and it all went to banks, went to debtors. We actually will enshrine in legislation that those workers, they come first, not last when it comes to pensions. We'll make sure that we're going to increase the OAS, the GIC. We're going to enshrine that the EI, as I've spoke to, is actually not to be used as a bank, that you can't touch it. And we're also going to look into creating a national-wide program for a pension in Canada. I don't have enough time to go into the specifics. Look on our platform, it's there. It's about protecting people and protecting workers. And that means for their retirement, so they can retire with dignity. Thank you.
Seniors, this is the first thing we did right from the get-go, restoring the eligibility age from 67 from Harper era to 65. Another significant enhancement to CPP since its creation to raise the maximum CPP benefits by 50% once fully implemented. Disability issue, we're doubling parents looking after disabled children. We're going to double the benefit from, I think it's close to $5,000 from $2,500 now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I apologize for having to refer to my notes because I did write this, but I can't remember all the numbers in it. We want to increase the Canada Pension Plan benefit from 25% of replacement income to 50% over the course of 5 years. That'll be about a $2 billion injection into seniors' pockets in the first year, rising to $4.5 billion in the fifth year. All this within the context of a balanced budget, mind you. Secondly, we have $50 million going to veterans and other people who have generally larger degrees of disabilities than others. $50 million a year is budgeted now, and we have another $30 million a year budgeted for a national dementia strategy. Dementia affects many of the people in this room, and for those of us who haven't been affected by it, we need to have a lot of sympathy for those who are. We think we need to have a national strategy to account for this and understand how we're going to go forward. So we want to bring the CPP up so that the CPP itself can provide a reasonable level of support to everyone across the country. $2 billion in the first year, rising to $5 billion in the fifth. Thanks.
And we are going to move along to the next question, and this question is starting with Michael. The question is, I'd like to have PAL increased to 10-year licenses taken out of the hands of the RCMP and have restrictions of firearms removed. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts personally, or my thoughts on the NDP? Just so you all know, I have an RPAL, so I am a gun owner, and I do have a long rifle, a 30-06. I joined the Mission Gun Club. I go there regularly. But taking it out of the hands of the RCMP, I'm not sure if it's definitely not on our platform. What I do agree with, though, is the comparison that we have as Canadians to the US, and obviously what's going on down there is incomprehensible. It's absolutely frightening. But I think as Canadians, we understand, and myself going through the system, that it's a very regimented system where you have to do your PAL course, then your RPAL course, there's background checks, you have to get vetted, and then you have to belong to a gun club, you only have to your transport and carry license, it's absolutely regulated. And so on that fact, personally, I would say that if there's one platform actually the other day, it was killing the Senate, which actually now, I would rather say the piece that I actually disagree with is the NDP's stance on gun control. And that's it, thanks.
Yes, go ahead.
We have introduced Bill C-71. This, sorry, C-71, enhancing background checks in those seeking acquire firearms. By the way, I'm a good old farmer and I have two guns at home. Fully life history of a person who is seeking to buy a gun, including history on mental illness associated with violence. There used to be 5-year history. Now one has to check the whole life history before somebody owns a gun. And then we want to know if there's a restricted firearm. If somebody's moving that, the authorities want to know where the prohibited gun is going. So with that, I'm pretty sure we are tightening and monitoring the situation with the gun owners. Thank you.
Lots of Greens are hunters. All Greens are conservationists. Possessing a properly regulated firearm is the right of people, and long guns are things that people need to have to get country meat and get food. No issue there. Military-style assault weapons are designed to kill lots of people in a rapid time, or to wound as many people as you possibly can, as grievously as you can, in a short period of time as possible. They have no place in Canadian homes. They have no place in the hands of Canadian cops, frankly. We want to demilitarize the police, and we should sure as hell be demilitarizing our homes. Handguns, likewise. We want to have a buyback program, as they have successfully in Australia, for illicit weapons like, and I know when I say assault weapons, some firearm people will say, no, they're not really assault weapons. Civilian equivalents of military-style assault weapons. And handguns. We want a voluntary buyback program first. We want to have this Canadian Border Security Agency much ramped up to intercept illegal transfer of firearms into the country. Long guns, hunting rifles, pistols for sporting, no issue.
Thank you.
The fact is, the vast majority of firearms owners respect Canada's gun laws, so I'm absolutely open to considering a 10-year license. Regarding the removal of the RCMP, I haven't studied that or thought about it before, so it would be irresponsible to comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I use this time?
I like short answers.
All right. Recruiting and retaining school staff, especially in rural or remote areas, has become a huge challenge. How can the federal government ensure that students in rural and remote communities receive equity in education when it has become difficult, if not impossible, to fill positions? And I believe that we will begin with Jati.
Well, going forward in the country, one has to have a certain or some kind of skills. We want to make sure that every Canadian has access to high-speed internet, so they can have classes. People doing business in the remote areas will have. We are promising Canadians that by 2027, 90% Canadians in the rural areas will have high-speed internet. For instance, a couple of years ago, Boston Bar, we allocated $9 million to put games in the ground. 6 months ago in Lytton, and the Minister Jordan came herself, announced $14 million towards internet. So we know it's not a luxury anymore, it's a necessity. We're going to work towards it. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, and I frankly haven't thought about it in the intermediate years. We have a program for universal child care. We have a program for early childhood education. The formation, again, of investing in citizens is the most important thing we can do. Doing it as early as we possibly can is the most effective place to do it. The responsibility for educating kids in schools, of course, is provincial, but the federal government's got a bunch of more persuasion, I guess we can bring to bear on that. We think there are things that we can do better, but I'm not really prepared to comment on it right now, but truly, because I have not thought about the issue. I hate to take Brad's cop-out, but I'm going to. But I do want to say that we will provide the beginning and the end, early childhood care, early childhood education, free tuition to post-secondary and trades. Those are places where the federal government can play and can play very effectively. But I have to say that, I know we have issues in our small schools, but I want to say the school here in Ashcroft, this school here, has shown the way to remediating a whole pile of the real issues we have by starting to understand the nature of reconciliation, by starting to make sure that Indigenous kids are fully part of the programs. Period.
Thank you.
Generally, I would say the recruitment and retention of our educators is actually a provincial responsibility and not a federal responsibility. With the one exception of Indigenous schools that are administered through INAC. I would say, as a first responsibility, any government should ensure that Indigenous children receive equal amounts of funding that non-Indigenous children receive through our public school system. So I think if we're going to address this question, that's where we should start, is making sure our Indigenous schools across rural areas mostly are receiving adequate funding that is similar or higher than what we would receive in our public schools through the provincial system. Thank you.
INAC no longer exists.
Thank you, Michael.
I would agree that education is under provincial jurisdiction, but as my wife is a teacher, and I have a 3-year-old, a 6, and a 7, so grades 1 and 2, the NDP obviously supports education, and actually our first step was to eliminate student interest on student loans, but it will be, the plan is to ensure that it's part of the K-12 system, so that getting a degree is actually part of the entire public school system. We need to ensure that that public system is there. And I think the bigger, broader question that should be asked is, how do we invest in communities to ensure there's growth and prosperity so people want to stay here, and your doctors and your educators want to move to these locations and want to be here. And I think that's how we build Canada. It's what we did in the future, or what have we done in the past. The NDP, on a side note, we want to ensure that we invigorate the forestry sector, and that's ensuring that there's value added, that we modernize mills, and that we create new markets. It's about making sure that people have a job first, and then the children will come and go from there. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, and back to John. Yeah, the next question. Thank you. Geez, you think the pressure's on me. Okay, so what are your thoughts regarding e-cigarettes and vaping, especially for minors and around school grounds?
I think e-cigarettes are a wonderful example of the ability of business to find profit in misery. And I think they follow directly from the tobacco companies. They were adopting exactly the same idea, and if you can get kids addicted early, you make a lifelong customer. I think it's vile. And I think we should stop them being sold to children, and I think we should advertise against them being sold to adults. I have grandchildren. My son, one of my grandchildren, is a soccer player, and he told me he was excited about getting to go to high school because he would be able to vape with the other guys. And I said, Oliver, you're a soccer player. But they flavor these things for children. They set them up for children. They are addictive drugs being sold knowingly. And there's really not a hell of a lot of difference between selling that and selling opioids, openly addictive drugs. We have a problem with legal drugs in this country as well as we do with illegal drugs in this country, and it should be not allowed to be done.
I think vaping is a growing epidemic, especially for teenagers right now. I trust that our Health Canada officials are coming out with new regulations to get to a policy place where we have effective prevention and prevention methods in place to ensure our young people are not impacted by vaping. Secondly, there is also a new phenomenon taking place, and that is vaping marijuana products. And there aren't any regulations on vaping marijuana products right now. This is a big growing issue and young people are using vaping products and marijuana, and I really hope our Health Canada scientists are developing policies to stop this from taking place. Thank you.
Well, the NDP has nothing particular to vaping. It's obviously, it's a scourge. It's especially for our children. You know, when our children, I have, like I said, 3 small children, and I actually fear the day that my daughter's old enough, or daughters, where they come home and they have one of those devices. Obviously, as the NDP, we want to ensure that we support Health Canada and make it stronger and make sure it has the enforcement and the teeth to go after the serious efforts by tobacco, the industry, to put these products into the hands of our children. Bubblegum flavor, popcorn, like, well, you know, these aren't for adults, these are for children, and it's absolutely brutal that these companies are allowed to put this stuff out there. I also wanted to talk quickly about the opioid crisis. We will immediately declare it a public health emergency, unlike previous governments. It is an absolute crisis issue in Canada. We're going to work on all 4 pillars, so enforcement, prevention, treatment, and harm reduction. And as well, we're going to also go after the pharmaceutical companies that have helped perpetuate the crisis that we have in that. Thanks.
Well, this is one thing I never did in life, didn't smoke. Forget about the marijuana flavored, never smoked, period. We've been watching this situation actually since the talk is going on. Americans have an issue with the young children. And as we know, we are responsible for the well-being of Canadians since we have the national Medicare system. So the talk is it's getting to that point that our youth is getting hurt or getting sick, we might have to ban it. Thank you.
Okay, and back to Brad. What are you going to do about our lumber industry?
The Conservative Party has committed. Well, first off, there's a lot of people suffering because of the softwood lumber agreement, and that falls squarely on the Liberal government. The Liberal government said that they had reached an agreement with the United States and they were moving forward with a solution. That solution never came forward, and 4 years now down the road, people are suffering because we don't have a softwood lumber agreement. So our leader has committed to, as one of the first orders of business, is going to the United States and starting negotiations so we can get our Canadian workers back in the mills and supporting their families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I touched a little bit on what we're going to do for the NDP's plan. That's to support mills, modernize them, and that's including safety and ensuring that there's free market to access and value added. Also, silviculture is huge, reforestation, especially with the pine beetle crisis. We need to have resources from the federal government to assist BC in what's one of our biggest industries. I also wanted to talk about free trade agreements and to talk about agreements that have basically given away Canadians' rights as we've seen jobs go away. And I think that's the fundamental issue. It's not talking about solutions, it's looking at the actual root causes as to why we are in dire straits with a lot of our communities with jobs disappearing. And I can tell you that right now the NDP is committed to ensuring that there are transparent and open processes when we enter into discussions with other countries. It's about making agreements that benefit Canadians, not multinational corporations, not countries like China, but ensuring that you, as Canadians, are investors. You should be the investors in investor rights agreements, not CEOs and board of directors. So anyways, thank you.
You know what? Signing 3 major agreements, we have opened the doors for Canadians to do business with the 1.5 billion people. First time ever, 3 great agreements. CETA, CPP, NAFTA, $2 billion a day business for the Americans. I've been having continuous meetings with the lumber industry. So I, with the help of Minister Sohi, brought in $8.5 million to promote our lumber abroad. Sometimes it's better if America was giving us a bit of a hard time. It gives us the opportunity to open the doors of the European Union, Japan, Indonesia, India. Ongoing, we have set aside $230 million to promote our lumber industry. Thank you.
Well, again, the lumber industry specifically falls pretty squarely within provincial domains. The forests are a different issue. And we think the federal government has a strong role to play assisting with reforestation, assisting with creating fire breaks, assisting with processing all the standing dead timber out there. Every one of us here lived through the Elephant Hill fire. Every one of us here has seen little kids out in the street breathing smoke from these fires for a couple of years. Thank heavens not this year. This is a real and present danger to our health and to the forests, and we know we need to treat it, and the feds should be ready to stand up immediately with money to support the provincial government and the industry. Secondly, the Union of BC Municipalities just last week, or a week and a half ago, passed a resolution. They want the provincial government to start to treat forestry again as it used to be, as a more locally based industry. If we have companies that are responsible to the communities within which they reside, we will have a better forest business. Now we have very large corporations who are moving in That's it.
This question is for the Liberal Party. A few months ago, Mr. Trudeau promised to raise the allowable earnings for pensions from $3,500 a year to $15,000 per year. Was that a true promise or another scam?
You know what? Any party with their policies try to serve Canadians. There's no scam, okay? So 3,500 to 5,000, sorry, for seniors? Is that what you said? Sorry, the question.
$15,000.
No, it's 5,000.
Yeah, we are saying that one doesn't have to pay taxes on the first $15,000 earned, and we're going to keep that promise. I talk about my track record. We created 1 million jobs in this country. The economy is growing leaps and bounds. No economist ever predicted that our economy grew 3.6% in the first 2 quarters. Revenue, general revenue to Canada coffers has grown 1.3%. We're going the right direction, our policies are working. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Going back to Brad, a report published today, this question is directed to you. A report published today at pressprogress.ca stated that Canada's biggest anti-abortion group says that it is endorsing 1 in 5 candidates for Scheer's Conservatives in the 2019 election. 19% of all Conservatives in BC are on the list that they published. Where do you stand on this issue?
The Conservative Party leader, Andrew Scheer, has been very clear that a Conservative government would not reopen the abortion debate.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he has. Thank you. I respect our leader's position. I do have my own deeply held perspectives as a Christian, but I stand behind my leader and his assertion that abortion will not be reopened by a Conservative Party. Thank you.
Okay, moving along, and
Dana, let them answer.
oh, sorry.
They can answer. They can address that.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's okay. Obviously, the NDP finally will not open that debate. We believe in the absolute right, a woman's right to choose. What I wanted to talk about, though, is I've always thought of it as an economic issue of how a woman, and especially with the gender gap that we have, 32% still women are underpaid over men in this society. Look at this table right now. Do you see any over here? Any women up here? No. I think there's a systemic root cause issue in Canadian society, and it needs to be addressed. It needs to make sure that a woman that has a mother, has 3 part-time jobs, has the ability to run for office, that has the ability to have her say. And I think it's absolutely abhorrent that the issues that face women today are still relevant today as they were 40 years ago. So to me, it's the economic, options, or it's removing the economic constraints and barriers to ensure that if they want to have that child or not, They can choose, not because of an economic decision, but because of a personal decision. Anyways, that's just my 2 cents on that.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, studies around the world have been done. If we empower women, give a woman equal rights, the next generation is better off. Communities are better off. So what we did, $1.5 billion to look after women's health, women's equality, pay equity, harassment at work. We are, of course, we're women's right to choose and we're pro-choice, but we're the party. There are 27% female elected with the Liberal Party of Canada today, 50% portfolios with Liberal Party today held by women. So we respect women, we understand that they need to come up to the level playing field so we have better society. Thank you.
2 quick comments. One, we're all flooded these days with reports from various organizations. We need to be careful to check our sources. Pressprogress.ca is actually the house organ of the Broadbent Institute. I have a great deal of respect for Ed Broadbent. I'm not suggesting for a moment anything other than that. But it is not press. It is, in fact, a house organ of a political organization. So we all need to check our sources because we're all flooded with this kind of stuff from people who use all sorts of names. Number 2, I actually work for a woman leader, and I am delighted to do that. Jackie in the audience is another woman leader. Women are taking, obviously, more and more positions of strength, responsibility, and power throughout this country and around the world, and it needs to be celebrated and enhanced in whatever way we can. I told Elizabeth when we first got together that most of my life I'd been the leader, the boss, whatever, the chairman, the president, or what I was going to do. But in this case, I am just so proud to be second fiddle to a strong woman leader. It's the best thing I've done for years.
John, this question is still back to you. The Green Party is committed to no pipelines. The party is also committed to a close working relationship with the Indigenous community, some of who want an active role in owning, managing the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which Canadians already own. How do you see that working out with the inevitable conflicts that may ensue?
We stand resolutely for no pipelines, no matter who owns them. Number 1, they're uneconomic. Let me try to bust 3 quick myths about this pipeline. Number 1, the reason the private sector is not involved in it is because it's profoundly uneconomic. It's never going to make a nickel. Mr. Trudeau's promises of plowing $500 million of, quote, profits back into renewables are nonsensical. Number 2, there's no market for the product. It is the most expensive oil to process in the world, that tarry bitumen. No one wants to buy it. Number 3, it gets now the same price that the equivalent product gets in the Gulf states, which is the only place, in the American Gulf, the only place it can be processed in the world, and it gets the same price as Mayan heavy crude and Mexican heavy oil, precisely. So there's no reason to imagine that this project is ever going to generate a nickel for anybody. So, in the respect of the First Nations across this country generally have better sites for renewable energy than most of the rest. They have the power to put up enough solar and enough wind on reserves across the country to generate tons of power to plug into a national electrical grid to make revenue that way. But we don't support anybody, Martians, First Nations, Canadians, anybody building pipelines.
Okay, and response?
Well, talk is cheap. I mean, we can promise anything on a piece of paper. How are we going to do our energy into renewable energy without money? The $500 million expected revenue coming from the pipeline, we committed every penny of that income is going to wind energy, solar energy, geothermal. We're phasing out coal. We're aggressive goal by 2040 in our country. No dealer would be able to sell any gasoline car. So we're putting 5,000 charging stations with that money. We're putting services on the table. Remember Madam Notley, the Premier of Alberta, she was buying 5,000 rail cars. So the crude was going through our communities. It is so dangerous. The best way to hit the tide water is through pipelines. Thank you.
Well, the NDP firmly believe that spending $4.5 billion on a liability in a leaking pipeline was not the best for all Canadians, was not in your best interests. Having said that, we've divested ourselves of that pipeline. But again, we also understand that the provinces should have a right to veto any project that crosses boundaries. It should be up to each individual province to have that right through Confederation. And finally, we are committed to working with First Nations to the inherent self-rights and title that they have on their own lands. So I will say there's a bit of dichotomy there. There's a bit of a battle. If you give the province a rights, they say no. Well, there might be specific bands or tribes that may say they want to have that. I would also point out then that we are committed to ensuring they have the resources to ensure that whatever projects they want to do are part and parcel to ensure that they have economic viability. Our basic fundamental outlook is that whatever the project is, it's working with First Nations to ensure they have, okay, look on the platform, come to me afterwards, I'll talk to you about it, thanks.
I believe our Indigenous people are some of the best stewards of our environment in Canada, and during the national consultation process for the Conservative Party, I was able to meet a guy by the name of Calvin Heelan. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. He wants to build a pipeline in the north of BC. It's called the Eagle Spirit Pipeline. Ernie Cray, chief at Shem First Nation in the Fraser Valley, has also supported pipelines because of the money and benefits it will bring to many First Nations to bring them out of poverty. And I believe that they're going to do a very good job of monitoring these infrastructure pieces for the well-being of their people and the broader Canadian society. Thank you.
Thank you. This is our last written question of the night. The BC Tripartite First Nations Student Success Agreement is an agreement signed by First Nations Education's Steering Committee, the BC Ministry of Education, and the federal government that outlines the commitment of the three parties to improving educational outcomes for Indigenous students. Will your party continue to support this agreement? We'll start with John.
Yes, and we will also immediately commit to paying the money ordered by the Human Rights Tribunal in respect of the unequal treatment that First Nations children have received at the hands of educators, which was described as being wantonly negligent, I believe was the phrase used in the judgment. That money should be paid immediately. And with respect to First Nations opportunities and economic opportunities, we believe that they are ample and that they don't need to be sold pigs in pokes like pipelines. There are many, many, many things that First Nations can do with assistance from the federal government and on their own to get self-governance back, to start to move ahead with their own traditions in their own territories, to make economic opportunities for their own people, and we stand ready to assist in whatever way First Nations want to go, but we will not support building pipelines in northern BC, in the Northwest Territories, or anywhere. It's over.
Thank you.
Yes, I fully agree. We need to honor that agreement. As a national chief, Mr. Bellegarde, got on the national stage on the other day. He said what was done for the last 40 years with Indigenous people, no other government has done in the last 150 years. So we're on the right track. We're on the right track with reconciliation and understanding the need of Indigenous people when it comes to language, security, housing, affordability. So we're on the right track. Thank you.
I recall when Trudeau said, "Thank you for your donation to the Grassy Narrows protester," and I wonder about the broken promises. The NDP will fully implement Jordan's principle with working with provinces and territories to end the delays and ensure equitable access to healthcare services and educational supports for Indigenous children from coast to coast. That is guaranteed. As I've said, we will fully support the 94 calls to action, safe housing, clean drinking water, access to healthcare, closing the educational funding gap, ending the underfunding of Indigenous children's services and education. It's about a new relationship and forging ties that allow First Nations to actually move forward with dignity. 152 years, the federal government still has the agreement that was sent, just to me it's incomprehensible that we still have issues on First Nations today. That in other countries that would be, if that was happening in a neighborhood in Vancouver or Mission, it would be an absolute travesty. So all I can say is the NDP are fully committed to working to solve those root causes. Thanks.
The answer is yes. The Conservative Party supports Jordan's principle. First Nations children should have the same rights, access to services and opportunities as any other Canadian. Thanks.
And we do have another question, and this question is, where does your party stand on Medicare? And we'll go back to Brad.
As I mentioned earlier, the Conservative Party has committed to increasing the health and social transfers to the provinces by 3% annually for a total of $55 billion. We've also made an additional investment of $1.5 billion to purchase new medical imaging technology. Often one of the biggest reasons we have long wait times at our hospitals is because people can't get MRIs, so we want to address that directly. Thirdly, on Medicare, we have also announced a new plan for a national autism strategy to help the families and especially the individuals who suffer from autism to get the care and supports they need. Thank you.
Where do you stand on it?
The Conservative Party supports universal Medicare in Canada, and we are not wavering at all on that commitment. And that's why we've committed to maintaining our core social services while moving towards a balanced budget in 5 years. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, obviously the NDP, because if it wasn't for CCF and Tommy Douglas, we wouldn't have it, because Lester B. Pearson would sure have not passed it. It's expanding it. Ensuring that my grandmother, before she passed away, $500 a month on drug costs. Absolutely abysmal. We want to expand pharmacare, make it universal, or bring in pharmacare, bring in dental, $70,000 free for families $70,000 and under. Hearing, vision, it's the institutional cornerstone of what Canadian society is all about and how we protect each other and care for one another. And ensure also that we look at the preventable causes, because to me it's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of care. So it's looking at tackling at the root issues. So we don't have to have lineups at our hospitals. And as for MRIs, well, that's great to have the machinery, but what about the staff to actually utilize it? What about our technicians? What about our doctors and nurses? It comes back to the educational system that is preventing people from filling those positions that we need. When there's one specialist for, and I can't remember what my dad is on the island, he has to go to the Lower Mainland because there's one special oncologist, I think it's whatever. Anyways, it's absolutely brutal that our system is where it is today. So I don't know about supporting it, it's expanding it and making it better. And that's what the NDP had to do. Thanks.
2015, knocking on the doors, not enough doctors. You know what we did? In the last 4 years, the doctors in our country increased by 12.5%. Today, per 100,000 Canadians have access to 271 doctors. Medicare, we are injecting $6 billion in the next 4 or 5 years so we can have doctors and nurses into the rural areas. National Pharmacare, we retained Dr. Hoskin. He came back and his team with 188-page recommendations. You know what? By end of 2021, in our country, we're going to have a national pharmacare. No family in our country would spend more than $100 a year on any medication. You go to a doctor, you have a prescription, $2 per prescription. The study has been done, and we're going to go right ahead and start implementing it. Far too many Canadians don't fill their prescriptions. Thank you.
Well, we obviously support Medicare. And, again, we intend to tax those with the greatest ability to pay again for pharmacare, dental care for low-income Canadians, a strong program for mental health. But most importantly, we think it's time to renegotiate the Canada Health Code.
That's between the federal government and the provinces. And one of the stipulations of the Canada Health Act is that Canadians across the country will receive equal access to medicine. We know that's not true in rural communities. Clearly, it's not true. Those of us who live here know that that's just not the case. So we think the feds, again, have got a real role to play in this in saying, let's make sure that the monies that are spent by the federal government transferred to the provinces are transferred in a way that ensures effective services, especially for rural Canadians and for others who are disadvantaged by it. Last, I'm not as skilled as my colleagues at taking a question and segueing into an entirely different topic, but let me try. We got Medicare in this country because of a minority government. A minority government. The Liberals, as my colleague said, would never have implemented it. Tommy Douglas and the NDP and 17 MPs changed the nature of this country forever in that government in 1963. Green MPs will do the same thing this time. We will transfer our resources into the new economy rather than the old one for the benefit of all. Thank you.
Thank you. And this question, we're going to start with Jati. Could each candidate briefly outline what his party believes foreign aid benefits ordinary Canadians?
Pretty simple. We're a trading nation. We have to keep our relationship with the rest of the world. By United Nations, we need to put a 0.07% to the foreign aid. Right now, we're doing 0.28% foreign aid, which is not good enough. And you know, the Conservative Party, Mr. Scheer said he's going to cut 25% foreign aid. We need infrastructure where we deal with the rest of the world. They have lost the Security Council seat at the United Nations. We can't build silos in our country. We need to have good relation with the rest of the world. So people don't show up at our doorstep when they don't have enough food and enough security in their countries. So we need to be mindful. We need to be helpful around the world so we can do trade. Thank you.
Well, I agree with what Jati said, except I'm not so sure that it's all about economic benefit. We are one of the richest countries on the planet. And we have, again, an ethical duty to share some of that with people who are not so well off. We have benefited greatly from exploiting resources here, from dominating the indigenous people here, etc. These are things that we can, to some extent, make up for a little tiny bit with, I agree, bring our foreign aid back up to the 0.7% of our GDP, where it should be. We certainly shouldn't be cutting it. We think we need to be doing this also in respect, back to the issue of climate, where we're the largest per capita consumer of fossil fuels in the world here in Canada, and we have been burdening the rest of the planet and not assisting the rest of the planet to deal with that stuff. So we want to spend about $1 billion a year to assist what used to be called developing nations, the poorer countries of the world, to deal with their own climate emergencies, because we share this around the planet. So increase foreign aid to 0.7% of GDP and spend a little more money to deal with the climate issues that we, the rich world, have caused.
As part of our plan to move towards a balanced budget in 5 years' time, we have committed to cutting 25% of Canada's foreign aid spending. The reduction will come from middle and upper income countries, as well as hostile regimes. We will use the savings to pay for policies that help Canadians get ahead at home, and also redirect $700 million to strengthen foreign aid in the countries that need it most. Let me be clear, the Conservative Party wants to help the world's most vulnerable. We're committed to that. But there are parts of our foreign aid envelope that just are not palatable to the average Canadian. For example, we gave $235 million to the Asian Infrastructure Bank, which is owned by the Communist Party of China. They're using money, foreign aid money from Canada, to build coal-fired electric plants in places like Indonesia and sub-Saharan Africa. Canada should not be a part of that process. We need to be responsible with the money that we give to other countries, and we do need to help the world's most vulnerable. Thank you.
Well, the NDP is absolutely committed to helping those countries maintaining human rights, indigenous rights, equality, rights of children, rights of women, and we've committed to putting 0.07 of our gross national income to that cause. You know, I remember when Canada used to be a peacekeeper. when we actually went out in the world and was a beacon of hope for people, to share our values with them, to ensure that the things that we hold dear to our hearts were shown to the world of what a nation that we could be in the leadership role that we would take. And I don't think Canada has that role as much anymore. I think we've been involved in a lot of conflicts, and the world is stabilizing. Has created issues where, wearing that Canadian flag on your backpack when you went through Europe or wherever isn't so much, it's been a bit tarnished. And I think it's time to reverse that. So we're committed to working with the UN and committing to, yes, helping foreign countries. And no, not dictatorships and despots like some countries have done, like Saudi Arabia, which now owns the Canadian Wheat Board, or $15 billion a year in arms exports to Saudi Arabia. I think we need a new path, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much to all our candidates for addressing tonight's questions. We are now at 8:45, and we will begin with our closing remarks, starting with Brad. Right? Oh, sorry. John? John Kerr.
Well, thanks for coming out, folks. Much appreciated. I just want to say, finally, that, I'll dwell one more time. When you have that pencil in your hand, you look at the pointy end of that pencil and think of your children, and think of your grandchildren, and think we're going to make that mark. We can all do things to benefit ourselves. We can all have slogans that say, more in your pocket, we're in it for you, the middle class needs to be better off. And all of us can solve those issues. They're simple, money issues. They're not hard to deal with. The issue of what's happening with the planet and what we can do to have the world for our children and our grandchildren be as good as it was for us. That's the issue. That's your moral issue. That's the one you carry in your heart and you carry in your head when you go into that ballot box. All of us here will talk about social issues, we'll talk about spending, we'll talk about budgets, all of that. And we're all, not really that far apart. Where we differ is whether or not we need to step up to the plate to meet our responsibility to our children and our grandchildren. Indigenous people up here have taught me a whole lot about being an elder. And one of the big things about being an elder is that one, we have a responsibility to the future generations of our people, our civilization, and all our relations, which includes all of the living things on this planet. It is a responsibility we cannot avoid. At the same time, it's an opportunity we don't want to ignore. This industrial transformation is going to be unbelievable in 20 or 30 years. In 50 years, we won't recognize the world. It's going to be an if and only if we stop that climate curve going past 1.5 degrees. And we can do that. We just have to stop mining fossil fuels. It's not hard. We stopped harvesting square timbers, as I said before.
Well, stop using them.
Absolutely.
Stop using them.
Stop. Eric, you want to get into an argument later on? I'm happy to have many. Okay. What I'm saying to you is all of us, including Eric Poole, have a duty to stop using them, a duty to stop producing them, a duty to stop selling them. We know that, all of us in our hearts. So I ask you in your heart, when you're in the ballot box, to use your heart. All of our heads are in the same place. Use your heart, and you'll know what to vote for. Thanks.
Thank you.
Let me start thanking you for the opportunity you have given me to serve you for the last 4 years. Serving our community was a highlight of my life. I want to return to Parliament to continue, build on the progress we have made for the last 4 years. We're implementing a national pharmacare program. Our government is increasing the OAS by 10% for seniors and the CPP for survivors benefit by 25%. Our government is ensuring the middle-class Canadians do not pay any federal tax on the first $15,000 earned. We're creating 250,000 new childcare spaces in Canada. We're going to ban single plastics use and planting 2 billion trees in the next 10 years. Let me remind residents in the rural communities, they should be very concerned with Andrew Scheer's $53 billion program cuts. That will include infrastructure projects like Ashcroft, I mentioned already, inland port, which is creating hundreds of thousands of jobs right here. Make no mistake, rural communities will face the brunt of conservative cuts. I'll continue working hard for you, and I sincerely hope I can count on your support to continue move Canada forward. Thank you for being here. Good night.
I ask you, once again, think inwardly to yourselves and ask yourselves, are you better off now than you were 10 years ago, 20 years ago? I think we all understand that this trickle-down economic theory that's been driven at us for years, it's failed. You know, leaving us to fight amongst each other over the crumbs that are left with multinational corporations as they go around the world in globalization and picking the countries with the least regulations on environmental and workers' rights is not the way to do business. And that's why the NDP understands that we need to invest in Canadians. We need to have agreements. We need to make sure that corporations work and are competitive. But we also make sure that everybody gets their fair share. And there's been a disparity and an inequality that we have seen happening. So as the NDP, we're going to invest in healthcare, in childcare, in education. We're going to make sure also that the 1% pay a 1% wealth tax. We're going to also make sure we cut the bearer shares dividends, so you don't see $40 billion moving offshore every single year into tax-free tax havens. It is absolutely despicable that we have federal governments in the past that have looked to their corporate friends as opposed to ordinary Canadians in ensuring that you can make ends meet, as opposed to wondering what next month, well, are you going to put food on the table or pay for rent on your head, or whether you're even going to have a job. I've never actually worked in a union job, to be honest. I'm going to tell you right now. Right now, as a contract worker, my contract's out in December, and I have no idea, and I don't get benefits as to whether or not I'm going to be able to fend for my family or not. I think the transference of good quality jobs and dependability into where we see now where there's insecurity is an issue that we all need to tackle. And the NDP with our platform plans to do that. It's about investing in you, not corporations. It's about making sure that there is a spreading of the manure, as I was talking, so that we can all grow together. So I hope that on October 21st, you take the time, vote for Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, because as I said earlier, we're not in this for multinational corporations. We're in this for all of you. Thank you.
I want to start by thanking my colleagues. This is our second last debate out of 9 together, so I've gotten to know these guys a little bit on the stage, and we've had some fun. I'm just going to mention something. Let's talk about integrity for a second. We can say whatever we want up on stage tonight, so I'm going to just outline a couple of standards that if you do vote for me, I'd like to try and uphold. So first off, number 1, was I open, accessible, and transparent? Did I advocate and seek to support key sectors of our economy, such as agriculture, natural resource, transportation here with the terminal? Did I stand up for you, the taxpayer, and demand that Ottawa does better with the money you send them every year? Was I here in Ashcroft and Cache Creek to help build this community? Did I open an MP mobile office? Was I here on a regular basis for scheduled and planned events? Did I do my honest part to build relationships with the First Nations in this riding? But most importantly, did I have your back when you needed me as your local representative? This is a big and complex riding, but the MP still needs to have the back of every single citizen, no matter where they are, no matter what town. So I'm thankful for this opportunity. I absolutely love coming up here. Every time I'm here, I just have another amazing conversation with some of you in this room too. And so my name's Brad Vis. I'm your Conservative candidate, and I'm just thankful for you to be here tonight and to participate in the democratic process. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again to all our candidates, and thank you for your attendance. And that now concludes tonight's All Candidates Forum.